Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to explain why the Democrats are pretty much going to be the underdogs to retake the Senate in the near future. By near future, I mean the next two election cycles. So in 2026 and 2028, I think the Democrats are pretty strongly underdogs for retaking it. So first off, we have to look at 2026. This is currently what I think 2026 will turn out to be. Democrats flip North Carolina and Maine blue, but they have to play defense in Michigan and Georgia. And they're probably not going to win Ohio, let's be honest here. So then we go to 2028, and this is a presidential year. Currently, the Republicans hold Wisconsin and North Carolina. So it's probably going to come down to who wins the presidency on who actually controls the Senate, because if it's a 50-50 scenario, then the VP breaks the tie, and the presidential coattails are going to be pretty much real. So starting off with Arizona, this is probably going to be a blue hold. Again, Mark Kelly, he's a strong Senate candidate, and usually the Democrats that run in Arizona, the Senate Democrats, outperform the presidential candidate for Democrats pretty much all the time here. In Georgia, Raphael Warnock, I think he'd be able to hold off any losses potentially here. North Carolina, I think it's just going to go red presidentially in the 2028 presidential election. So with those presidential coattails, Republicans just need to win the presidency, and they have control because the VP will break the tie in this scenario. So Democrats have to play defense in Pennsylvania and Nevada. The issue with Pennsylvania is if Fetterman's the nominee, he could very likely lose the general election, especially with how divisive he is and how disliked he is in Philadelphia. But I think I'm assuming Connor Lamb's probably going to primary him. I'm thinking Connor Lamb's probably going to end up unseating him in the primary. So maybe you could see a scenario where like Fetterman swaps to the Republican Party, but I don't really think that's going to happen anytime soon. I still think he's probably going to run in the Democratic primary, but he's probably going to lose. So again, the result in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, it could come down to who wins those states presidentially. So let's say Vance wins Pennsylvania and wins Wisconsin. These states are very likely to go red because of those coattails in effect. Pennsylvania would be pretty much an open seat in that scenario, and there's no incumbency at all. But you could even argue that incumbency didn't even help out Bob Casey. So either way, I think Pennsylvania will swing with whatever presidential nominee wins this state. So if it's a Democrat, this state's going to stay blue for Senate. If it's a Republican that wins here, it's going to go red, in my opinion. I think the same for Wisconsin. But you could also make the argument that Ron Johnson, he typically outruns the presidential candidate, but he is on the older side. So this might turn into an open seat, which would honestly be pretty good for the Democrats that it's an open seat, because Ron Johnson's pretty much an overperformer typically. So let me just turn these seats back to toss up. But you could already see how the Democrats are still the underdogs in this scenario. So let's assume it's 45 to 49 here. Democrats only have like a 30% chance at winning the Senate back in 2020, assuming they win Maine and North Carolina. So they pretty much have to sweep 5 out of 6 of these Senate seats if they win the presidency. And that's pretty much the only scenario where if they flip Wisconsin and Pennsylvania go blue, they're likely winning the presidency. So they would have to win Nevada. They have to hope that they don't underperform Nevada like they did in 2024, but still the Senate candidate pulled through there, and I'm assuming the incumbent in Nevada, she's going to run again. So I just put back to where all the incumbents are. So really, their main priority has to be win the presidency and just flip Wisconsin blue. However, if Maine goes red, they also have to flip North Carolina blue. So they have to sweep the board in terms of Senate contests if they don't pick up 2 seats in 2026. Now, long term, we could take a look at the Senate map here. So this is just all the Senate seats shaded according to how competitive they were presidentially. So Republicans have 46 safe red seats. These are seats that went to Trump by over 12 points. Ohio is likely red. Even though it went to Trump by 11, I think Senate-wise, it's always going to be pretty competitive. It's always going to be in the likely red category. So usually Senate races here go red by like 6 or 5 points in Ohio. So Ohio just has more competitive Senate races than they do presidential ones typically. So that's why it's likely red instead of safe red, even though it went to Trump by 11. Um, these other states, Democrats have about 12 likely seats here, so that's also pretty bad for them because it's definitely possible that one of these seats out of all of these could go red, and the most likely one would probably be New Hampshire because it's one of the closer presidential seats. It was lean blue back in 2024. It was only decided by about 2.8% in 2024. So that's a potential flip for Republicans. So Democrats basically, in terms of the swing seats, they need to win 12 out of 14 swing seats to even have a tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So that really hurts them to even pass legislation through Congress. And that really puts them into a position where they're forced to win the lion's share of swing seats. Because right now, Republicans own 5 out of the 14 swing seats here. So they need to flip 3 swing seats back to blue. And also in Maine, they currently don't even own that seat, the Democrats. Currently, that is owned by Susan Collins. So really, the map gets a little bit worse for them if you include Maine as a swing state here. So already the Democrats are already pretty much a structural disadvantage in terms of the Senate because they probably aren't going to win in Iowa anytime soon. That's the closest state for them. In Alaska, they have to get pretty lucky there. Have to hope the Republicans just nominate a bad candidate because even if Mary Patola does run in 2026, she's probably going to lose because there's an incumbent Republican there. Florida is just trending super far away from Democrats. Texas also doesn't look pretty favorable for Democrats. So overall, I think that the Senate Democrats are at a pretty big disadvantage. They only have like a 30% chance of retaking the Senate in 2028. That's assuming they do good in 2026. It could always go bad for them in 2026. We could see Republicans somehow hold on to North Carolina or even hold on to Maine or even flip Michigan with, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. But Republicans could get that lucky in 2026. We could see a scenario like this unfold, but I don't think that's likely. I think the Democrats are at least going to get one Senate flip, either from North Carolina or Maine. Right now, I think they get 2 Senate flips. So Democrats have a 30% chance of retaking the Senate in 2028 by my estimates. So right now, if there's a Democrat presidential victory, it's probably going to look like this map in the Senate. They flip Wisconsin blue, hold on to all their Senate incumbents. They could get to a 50-50 tie again, but that really hurts their ability to pass legislation in Congress. So that's pretty much what I have to say for the Democrats' Senate odds in the coming years. Other than that, thanks so much for watching. If you aren't subscribed to this channel already, you should definitely consider doing so. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.